It's somewhat strange to think an entire 18-week NFL season for an NFL team can come down to effectively a 20-minute stretch of a Week 16 game in Buffalo. But for the Atlanta Falcons, that's pretty much exactly what happened for their team. You have to remember in Week 16, the Atlanta Falcons were sitting at a 7-8 record. Even more notably, at that point, the Buffalo Bills had two more wins than a team who, in the offseason, would go on to completely overhaul their roster, trade away their franchise quarterback, and embrace a new era of their football team. Compare that to the Buffalo Bills, who were, from beginning to end of last season, one of the main championship contenders in the AFC. However, that 20-minute stretch that I am talking about for the Atlanta Falcons was what basically took their season from a hopeful to make the playoffs to not really a disappointment of a season, but honestly somewhere right around where we should have expected them to be. This team was without Calvin Ridley for a majority of the season. They're going to be without him again this whole entire season. They were playing a wide receiver at running back. They were playing an offensive line that, outside of Jake Matthews and outside of moments of both Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom, this offensive line had guys in and out. This offensive line had guys who were inconsistent. This offensive line had moments where you look at the system that Arthur Smith wants to run in Atlanta. The offensive line that they had did not bode well for the fact that Matt Ryan had a lack of mobility at this point in his career. And it led to moments where Matt Ryan was just stuck in the pocket, it seemed like, for 3 to 4 seconds. And those 3 to 4 seconds, it seemed like he was being sacked the entire time. Ultimately, a 7-10 record led the Atlanta Falcons to miss the playoffs. They would lose that Week 17 game. I think I said Week 16 earlier, but it was Game 16. I mixed that up. But they lost that Week 17 game to the Buffalo Bills. They would go on to lose 20-30 at home against the New Orleans Saints to finish the season. And this was a team in Atlanta who started off decent. A 4-4 record to start. They had some big wins on the road, especially at New York, at Miami, and at New Orleans to get to 4-4 after the first 9 weeks. However, they follow up a 4-4 start to the season by losing their next 2 games at Dallas and at home against New England by a combined score of 3-68. That was practically the moment that the Atlanta Falcons were eliminated from the playoffs. However, they were, like I said, still in it up to that Week 17 game and that Week 17 moment where they had a chance in Buffalo. They started off getting a safety against Buffalo on a punt and were in pretty much the driver's seat in the first half, and they could not take advantage of it at all. They had a key mistake on a go route between Matt Ryan and Russell Gage where Matt Ryan underthrew him. Admittedly, the game was in the snow, so it's not like you can expect any quarterback to be perfect in those moments. And honestly, the Buffalo Bills were kind of playing with their food for a majority of that first half when they were in the red zone. They tried a lob to Deion Dawkins in the back corner of the end zone that obviously came up not working out. And it took some time for the Buffalo Bills to establish that they were by far the better team offensively and defensively than this Atlanta Falcons squad. Now, I'm talking so much about last year and especially that game against the Buffalo Bills because this was kind of the story throughout the year for Buffalo. Every single team that you look at on their schedule and you say, yeah, they probably should beat that team. Teams like the Giants, teams like the Jets, the Saints for a week, the Jaguars, the Panthers, the Lions. They beat all the bad teams in the NFL. And I think if you want to be a good team, a sign of being a good team in the NFL is that you beat teams that people think are bad. And they did that exactly last year. Now, they had some really bad losses to decent teams. They didn't beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers once last year. They, like I said, lost the Buffalo Bills, lost at home to lost on the road to San Francisco, excuse me. Lost in New England, lost in Dallas. The only game you can look at and you kind of say, just based on the rosters, they probably should have won that game, was the game at home to Carolina that they lost 13-19. But outside of that game, I'd say they pretty much played perfect against the teams that they had chances of playing perfect against. They didn't really come up short in many of those games where they were the favorite. And I think going into this offseason, it was the perfect situation for them to move on from Matt Ryan, and not only move on from their franchise guy who set all the franchise records, had a chance to bring them to a place where his franchise had never been in Super Bowl glory. And, it's just perfect. He's far out of his prime. And Matt Ryan 5 years ago would have taken this team to the playoffs, no doubt. And it's a true testament to Matt Ryan's talent, Matt Ryan's knowledge of the game, Matt Ryan's ability on the football field, that this team was in the playoff hunt even through Week 18. They were in the hunt to make the playoffs. But why it was so perfect, like I said, he's obviously through his prime. He's obviously to a stage in his career where he needs to be on a really good team that can supplement his pros as a quarterback. And at the moment, the Falcons are not that. Now, what the Falcons are is a team that's not as far away as many of the other rebuilding teams are in the NFL. Hopefully, they have the next guy up in Desmond Ridder. And hopefully, they have a guy who can be the bridge while Desmond Ridder gets ready. I think where people are making a mistake with Desmond Ridder when they talk about him is, and this is not just to only Desmond Ridder, this is to every quarterback who comes into the league, and we say, oh, he needs to do the Patrick Mahomes and wait a year. Look, there's a difference between Patrick Mahomes and many of these other guys that need to wait a year. Patrick Mahomes needed to wait a year. He still could have gone to that Kansas City Chiefs offense year one and taken them to the playoffs. Where there's a difference between Patrick Mahomes and these other guys like Desmond Ridder, like other guys who were drafted this year and in previous years. You're not going to get the talent that Patrick Mahomes has just by waiting a year. You're not going to get it. What you are going to get by waiting a year is hopefully knowledge of somebody in front of you has moments in a season, in a game, in drives, in plays, where it's up to them. And you see what happens when that guy pulls it off. You see what happens when that guy comes up short. You see what happens when that guy makes plays that either win or lose the game. And you get to see how other people on your team react. You get to see how people in the media react and your coaching staff. You start to learn how to build trust with your play. And hopefully for Desmond Ridder, he's able to get that with Marcus Mariota this year. The other really good thing that Desmond Ridder will have going for him is hopefully, if he does not play this year, he will be inheriting an offense next year if that is the plan. If he sits this year and takes over next year, he will inherit an offense that features Drake London, Calvin Ridley, who will be going into the 2023 season, assumedly 100% healthy. There's not going to be an 18-week toll on Calvin Ridley's body, and he's basically just going to be able to work out for a year and stay in really good shape. And he really didn't play last year either. So he's going to be going into 2023. Even though he was injured, he should be beyond 100% by the time he comes back. You'll have Kyle Pitts, who was not only a Pro Bowl tight end as a rookie last year, possibly the greatest season we've ever seen from a rookie tight end. Now, the touchdown numbers weren't there, but the production that Kyle Pitts produced as a rookie tight end, a position who historically in Matt Ryan offenses has never been the most targeted position. Outside of a couple of years with Tony Gonzalez, the tight end position in Atlanta for the last decade has been kind of weak. And it's been mostly a position they've gotten away with using guys who are mainly blockers at that position. You hope by the time Desmond Ridder takes over for this franchise, they have something figured out at running back, and they have those last few holes on the offensive line patched up. Now, I think between Chris Lindstrom, between Caleb McGarry, and between whoever else fills out that offensive line, this team's also just going to get a boost on the offensive line off the fact that they'll have a mobile quarterback. I think one of the things that can make offensive lines look really good is a quarterback that can scramble and get out of situations himself. And now that they have Mariota or Desmond Ridder, whoever ends up starting, they will get a boost from that off the jump. Let's go ahead and talk about the defense. As it stands right now, the only two players on the defensive side of the ball that remain from that Super Bowl team are Deion Jones and Grady Jarrett. Now, not only are the only two names remaining from that team, they're really a couple of the only big names that this defense features. They did make the addition of Casey Hayward in the offseason, that corner. They still have A.J. Terrell, who is a very good young cornerback in his own right. But outside of those guys, it's a very thin defense, and it's a defense that, look, in the draft the last few years, it has been a major reason that this Atlanta Falcons team did not return to another Super Bowl and really struggled to stay relevant after that Super Bowl run. Honestly, there's really not a lot that you can say about this defense that is going to be positive with the outlook of this upcoming season, especially given that their division, it features Tom Brady, which having that game on your schedule twice a year is just a nightmare. New Orleans is a very competent franchise, and if Carolina figures a thing or two out, it could be tough to see the Atlanta Falcons win much more than 2 or 3 games out of their 6 against their divisional opponents. Look, in general, this team, not only is it young, not only does it have a lot of question marks at some positions, I think we're going to look back on the decision to draft Drake London at as high of an overall selection as the Atlanta Falcons decided to do it, as something of possibly a mistake in the next few years. I think there were a lot of guys who could have spearheaded a major rebuild on the defensive side of the ball for the Atlanta Falcons if they had decided to go down that route. I think when you look at the guys that were available in this year's draft, the Atlanta Falcons didn't do the best job they could have of taking some of those guys who are really good, really talented, and having them be the reason that they either defensively turn it around or offensively stay as one of the good groups that were in the top half of the league in terms of passing yards last year. And look, if you ask me, they didn't even take the second best wide receiver in the draft class, and they took him before anybody else. If you ask me, and maybe it's just the Ohio State fan in me, but if you ask me, and I think honestly if you ask a lot of people, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave were the 2 best wide receivers in this draft class. And you look at some of the other guys that went after Drake London. You look at somebody like a Jordan Davis who went to Philadelphia, someone like a Kyle Hamilton who went to Baltimore, someone like a Kenny Pickett that went to Pittsburgh. There was a lot of value in the draft at that number 8 selection when the Atlanta Falcons had it, and I think taking Drake London in the future is going to be viewed as one of the poor picks from the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft. Like I already said, the Falcons are going to face Tom Brady twice a year this year. They're going to face a Carolina Panthers team who's eager to think that they've figured it out. They're going to face a New Orleans Saints team who just historically is a good team. I say historically meaning the last decade. they've been a good team. No matter what's happened, we've seen them without Drew Brees, and they've been an okay team. They also go to the LA Rams. They also go to Cincinnati. They also host the Chargers, host the Steelers, go to Baltimore, and host the Cardinals. Throw in that they're not going to get their bye week until week 14. You could see a team in the Atlanta Falcons sitting at a 3-10 record, a 5-8 record, who is ready to turn the page and hopefully have something in Desmond Ridder that they know of by the end of this season. It's already been reported by Falcons beat writer, I forget what his name is, but you can look up the article yourself if you want to, where he basically said it's like maybe a 30% chance that Desmond Ridder plays this year. And honestly, now that I think about it, I think the number wasn't even that high that he put it as. This is Marcus Mariota's offense at this point. And the only reason he's not going to play is if he gets injured, if he is deemed not a positive player for this offense at the quarterback position, or if the Falcons are just so far out of playoff contention that they think they have to see what they have in Desmond Ridder. There is a recipe to where any one of those things can happen by week 14 when the Atlanta Falcons go into their bye week. And it's a very good chance that we see Desmond Ridder play. The only thing I wish I could see for Desmond Ridder, if he does play, is I wish I could see him on a team that is complete. Because if what does possibly happen happens and Desmond Ridder plays, it's more than likely going to be because they're just not in playoff contention. Their record is that bad that they're going to just go with the rookie and see what they got. All in all, in terms of a prediction for this team, obviously no Super Bowl, obviously no playoffs. This team needs to tank and focus heavily, put a lot of resources into defensive schematics with their coaching, a lot of resources into scouting for future prospects, a lot of research into upcoming free agents and guys that they could possibly trade for, because this is a defense that needs a complete overhaul. They lost their number one tackler in Foye Oluokun in the offseason and really did not make many adjustments to the defense and really made very few adjustments to the offense as well that lead me to think that they're even a much better team than they were last year. And, you know, you look at a team that was already 7-10 last year. They're going to have a very tough schedule this year. I see this team going anywhere in the vicinity of 4-13 to 7-10. And I'm swinging more towards the side of 4-13 or 5-12.